Because not only will we be talking something I love, and that is boxing, I also am doing the podcast with my little brother. Phil, what up, Phil?
I don't know. You just call me little brother. I think I'm your bigger brother now. But yeah, I guess that's about right with the age. That's about it.
All right, man. So we gonna get into it in this podcast. Boxing. And there's two major things we're gonna talk about. Ryan Garcia's beef with his promotion or promoters. And the other one, Carmelo and the Mexican monster. Is it gonna happen? Should it happen? And why not? Let's get into it. But first of anything, before we do anything, let's do the intro, man. Yeah, don't forget, support the podcast. Thanks to Hancho that he's making, and he's got all kinds of merchandise for this podcast. We got shirts, we got cups, we got mouse pads, and much, much more for sale. Check out the description and the link under my Facebook. And he's got a pretty good inventory. And thank you to Hancho, and thank you for everybody that's supporting this podcast. And we have to actually thank everybody for tuning in tonight. So there's two things popping right now. There is in the headlines. Ryan Garcia is arguing with his promoters, which is one of them was Oscar De La Hoya and Bernard Hopkins, which both in their early days were great, great champions and great, great fighters. So his beef was because there was something that was said that they think after this fight that he should retire. I never heard of that, man. In all my years of watching boxing, I never heard of anybody saying such thing like that unless they think that he's no good. You know, he's had a couple of fights, and recently he lost a fight, which was a really not a great fight. And I say he could have done a lot better. Or Deontay Davis. Deontay Davis is a beast. But, you know, like I always say, with as you get better, you get better fights. And then you get better positions. I think kind of sort of he's kind of rushing it. You know, he's still young. You know, you wait till you get to a certain amount, even though you're a champion, you still just gotta pick and choose your fights and pick and choose your battles. And I think that's what's going on with him right now. You know?
Yeah, and listen, and I would just say to that is that listen, I think that this year we had more fights and more people that we wanted to see fight than for the longest time, right? You had Earl Spence versus Crawford. That was an amazing fight. You're
That was a
talking
great
about
fight.
Javante
Great
Davis,
fight.
Ryan Garcia. That was a great fight. You want to talk about Haney and Lomachenko. So I think that, we got to get past that era of the Mayweather where it's going to be 50 and 0. Not everyone's going to be undefeated. And I think until we can get past that, we're not going to see some of these great fights. And I think that, kind of what you're talking about, Ryan Garcia, yeah, listen, Tank was no joke. And listen, I think that it was great that they both took that fight. And listen, and one of them had to walk away with the L. But when you think about the greatness of the boxing and, you don't look at Ali and say, okay, Ali had 6 losses and he's less than what he is. Iron Mike had some losses. Like, I think when you think about the greats, a lot of them had L's. I think that, you see Mayweather and he's really one of the few that had that 50-0. Obviously, Rocky Marciano as well. But we got to get past that. If not, we're not going to see these big fights that we want to see. And these guys got to worry about making more of the fights that people want to see, getting that pay-per-view money and getting that revenue that they all want to make. But that whole undefeated, it really has to change. And I think that for any of these fights and any of these fights to really be made, you got to have that those two guys that can really bring it together. And I think that this year we're starting to see a lot more of those fights. A big shout out, like I said, Crawford and Spence. I thought that was great. Them coming together this year.
Oh, that was a
Obviously, a
great
lot
fight.
of undefeated champions. So I think that this year I would say, listen, the boxing is looking good. I think boxing is back. And listen, I mean, and not just the fights. I mean, this is going to sound a little bit crazy, but even what Jake Paul is doing, right? Like he's brought a lot of eyes to boxing, and I think that a lot of those casual fans that maybe have been away for so long that we didn't know who the champions were, we didn't know who was fighting, are now kind of slowly trying to come back in boxing. And I think that this year was just a great, great year for boxing. I think we had a lot of great fights, and hopefully we talked about with the promoters and the business side of things, preventing a lot of these fights from happening. Hopefully over the next year or so, we start to continue to see some of these fights that everyone wants to see.
And I think you have a great point, but I also think that it has a lot to do with promotion and who's promoting you, who's actually trying to match you with the best fights that will bring you that attention, that will bring you that money maker, so you could become that main eventer. Because I think, because there was rumors right now that they trying to hook it up with Ryan Garcia and Manny Pacquiao. Bro, that is not a fight. I wouldn't pay to see that fight. Number one, you got Ryan Garcia, who's trying to come up, who's young, and you got, no disrespect, but to Manny Pacquiao, who's trying to fight a younger fighter. This, it's no interest in it. Now, you know what would be an interesting fight? Let's do a Ryan Garcia and Tank number 2. Let's get that L back and get a W. Because, see, like you said, Muhammad Ali, Joe Frazier, Sugar Ray Leonard, all got L's in their records. None of them really cared about being pound for pound. Quote, what they did was did a legacy of, okay, I'm going to fight you because I'm not going to duck you. I'm a better fighter than you. Win or lose. And if I lose, guess what? We going to have a rematch. And so that's why I respect a lot of the old fighters. Bernard Hopkins said that in his own ways, on his own words, that Ryan Garcia should listen to more of the older boxers who have been there, done that. But at the same time, they have to understand he's a young fighter. And young fighters have that mentality of, I am the best, I'm going to be the best, and I'm going to beat the best. So my advice to Ryan Garcia is, don't make a move yet. Think about what you're going to do. You think it's going to be the best move to leave Golden Boys to go to Mayweather camp? I don't think so. I don't think so. As his corner, I would tell him, stay where you at. Let's work this out. Even though a lot of people, like Carmelo said, he's a snake. Well, you tell me what promoters are really honest. Let's go back to the Don King days. Was Don King a saint? Don King was just as crooked as any promoter can be. I'm sorry to say it. If there's a promoter out there that was honest, hey, audience, let me know. But from what I see and from what I heard and what I learned, all promoters only care about one thing, and that's making money and bringing the good fights. That's
Oh,
their
absolutely.
job. That's
Well,
their job.
Well, you know, it's kind of funny that you're talking about that. I mean, that last fight, and I don't know if you saw Ryan Garcia's last fight. I think I sent you the video. You're not for nothing. He actually looked a lot like Oscar in that fight when he fought
He
Trinidad. The
did.
sticking and the moving, like it was very like Oscar s, which is funny. But listen, I think Ryan did the right thing. Listen, I don't know about the whole promotion and that whole business side of it, but listen, he got a new trainer now who's actually Earl Spencer's trainer, which I think is fantastic.
And he
Virgil,
was the trainer of the year. He just won the
right,
trainer of the year. So he made a
right. So
good
I
move
think
with that.
yeah, and I think listen, you mentioned it earlier. I think Ryan's trying to find it. I also think that he tried to train with Canelo's
Yes,
trainer
a,
as
a, a
well. But
manager, a trainer.
right. So but obviously, Canelo's a star there, right? And he's not going to get that one-on-one time that he needed. So I think with Virgil, listen, I think he found a home. I think he looked good in this last fight. I mean, he was sticking and moving. I don't think that it was an incredible, a fight, but he did what he had to do to win. And I think that let's see what happens with him as Virgil. Now, as far as the promotion side, listen, I just think that that's entertaining, right? He's giving Bernard
Of
Hopkins
course.
shit. He's giving Oscar De La Hoya shit. He's, saying stuff. And like you said, Canelo said a couple things. So I think more than anything else, that's kind of entertaining. I don't know how those splits work and, what kind of contract they have and whatnot. But I think right now that's kind of more of the entertainment side. And, let's see what happens. And I think that, listen, I mean, obviously he lost, and that I think a lot of those things come out. But when you win a fight, everything starts being better. And, they were all huggy lovey and everything was all good after you get a win.
Hey, it's a sport. It's a sport. You know what I mean? In any sport, either it's boxing or MMA or tug of war, it don't matter. It's a sport. And you always have to respect the person you're facing because it's not personal. It's a sport. And anybody who's into sports, either like I said, MMA or even football, it's all a sport. It's time consuming. It's getting better as you keep on doing it. And I think right now that young kid is not at his prime in his time. He's still got a long ways to go. Why rush it? Why make a mistake? You got your whole career in front of you. You take your time. You pick your fights. You pick and choose your fights. You're not like he picked and choose the fight. Manny Pacquiao. He don't want it. Why should you fight a Manny Pacquiao? Why? Like I said before, the one he needs to fight is Tank again. Let's get it. Let me get that win after that loss that I saw the fight the other day. I recapped it and I said, wow, he didn't look too good here. Was actually Tank a little too much for him? You know?
Oh, listen,
Uh,
absolutely. Listen, this is what I would say, and this is what I think boxing needs to change, and I think it's the same with MMA, in my opinion. If you get finished by a guy, and that's KO, TKO, disqualification, whatever, if you get finished, there should be no rematch. If you go to distance and it's a split decision, it's a unanimous decision, I think that's different. But I think if you get finished by a guy and you get knocked out, I don't think there should be an automatic rematch. I think you should wait a while, get a
Whoa,
couple more fights
no.
on you.
Well,
Absolutely.
yes.
You
Well,
get you get
yes. Well,
finished, you get
yes.
finished by a guy, you shouldn't get a rematch.
Listen, if that was the case, you know how many fights back in the days wouldn't happen? Look at the
But
trilogy
but
between Roy Jones and that other dude. They had 3 fights.
no, listen, I'm not saying that the rematch should never happen. I'm just saying it shouldn't happen right away. Think about if you're the champion and there's other fights that you want to start moving on to. And I think the Crawford and Earl Spence is a great example. Now they're saying Crawford might fight Canelo. Like that's a dream coming true. Crawford's 36 years old. He shouldn't be obligated to have a rematch after he finished them. Like I just think that there needs to be some different ways. If it goes to distance, there's a decision, give him a rematch. Right after you get finished, there shouldn't be a rematch. You should have a couple more fights, build your way back up, and then
Well, that's
get
the way
another
it's
chance
supposed to be.
again. And that's the
Again,
way
you're
there
right.
should be.
And you're,
But
and
you
you're
get
right.
finished, you
They
shouldn't have an
should.
automatic rematch.
I think it depends on the fighter and depends on the fight, how you lost. Because this Ryan Garcia fight, this last fight he had, the referee stopped it on the count of 8. There should be a rematch, like right away. I mean, me as the fighter that lost, bro, you didn't even count to 9 at 8. I looked at the video 3 times and I saw and heard when he said 8, he was already on his feet and they stopped the fight. Nah,
No, no,
rematch right
no,
away.
no. No, see,
Rematch right away.
I disagree with you there because they even said before the fight, the referee had told the fighters you got to be up by 8, and I went back to it, and
He
I
was
thought the
up.
same thing. I thought no,
He
he
was
was up
up.
at 10. I thought the count was a little bit quick, but if you start counting it from the second that he hits the canvas, it is 10 seconds. And listen, I mean, could he have gone on pretty more? I think he could have, but the ref told him he had to be up at 8 before in the locker room, and he was up at 10, not 8.
I don't know. I counted 8, man. I counted 8. I gotta
But
watch that
listen,
again then. But I
yeah,
counted 8 on that.
listen, like I said, no doubt about it. Was there controversy there? Absolutely. But listen, I think regardless, what we're kind of talking about with these young fighters, I think right now, when you just think about boxing, you got, Ryan Garcia, you got Devin Haney, who looked incredible last night, Javante Davis, Shakur Stevenson. I think we've got so many young fighters right now, and I think that
Oh,
people
so
are
many.
are just getting more into boxing. I think for a long time boxing was dead, and I think that for some of these fights that we had like this year, more casual fans are starting to come back and watch some of these fights, and I think that it's a
And
great
I
thing
am
for the sport.
so and I am so glad boxing is back. There was a point where boxing was dead, man. It was quiet. Nobody was talking about boxing. They were like MMA has taken over and boxing is dead for the rest of his life. And I was like,
And you know
no
what?
way, because it's just no way. And I'm glad it's coming back.
And you know what's funny? And listen, and you could disagree with me, but you know who I think deserves? I'm not saying a lot of credit, but deserves some credit for that. You know who?
Oh,
Fucking Jake Paul, man. I'm sorry.
oh,
I know
get
people.
out of here.
I
Oh,
know
get
people
out of
don't.
here.
I know. Listen, listen.
Oh,
I know
get
people.
out of here, man.
Listen.
Let me
I
tell you
know
something.
people don't like him. Hold on, hold on, hold
Two-time
on. So let me hold
man.
on. Give me a second. Give me a second. Look, I know people don't like him, and I get it. But think about some of the fights that he had this year, who brought in a lot of people. Him, Anderson Silva. That was people wanted to watch that. Him and Nate Diaz. People wanted to watch that. I'm not saying that he's a savior of boxing, but I'm saying he helped him and Tommy Fury. He had some fights that brought eyeballs back to boxing. People
You
weren't
know
watching it.
what?
He really got some excitement back in. He really did. He deserves some credit. I'm not saying that I'm a fan of his, and I'm not saying that he's an incredible boxer. I'm just saying he did some stuff with a sport that people might not give him credit for.
Hey, your opinion is your opinion. I laughed at everything he did. Now, is it really fighting what he's doing? I mean, is it a YouTube kind of thing he's doing?
Listen,
Or
Nate
is it
Diaz.
actually he's trying to get into something, a sport? I think
No,
it's
but
just
this
a
is
YouTube thing.
and listen, and it could be right. And you think about, you used to box, so you're familiar with this. We're watching his amateur fights professionally, right? A lot of other boxers had 80 amateur fights before they went pro. This kid is having amateur fights as his professional bouts. You know what I mean? So we're kind of seeing him as his amateur career. Listen, I'm not saying that he's great. All I'm saying is that his fights brought eyeballs back to boxing that weren't there before this year.
Okay, I give you that. I give you that. I give you
Now,
that. I
now I'm
mean,
not
to
saying. I
each
just want
his
to be
own.
clear. I'm not saying that he's going to be a champion and all that. Like I don't know about all that. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that his fights and some of the things that he did this last year got more fans kind of excited to watch boxing again.
You don't think it was the Mike Tyson and Roy Jones fight that actually started everything?
Brother,
The
I mean
whole thing
that was
started.
kind of old. That was. I feel like that was a while ago, brother. I think I'm talking about things of this year. I don't necessarily think they got people super excited about getting back in boxing again. I think those are two great fighters, but I mean, come on, they're like 50 something years old by now. That was just way past
Would
their
would
prime.
would you think? Would you think that Ryan Garcia right now has to make a decision? He has to make a decision of if he's going to stay with Golden Boy and fight the rest of the couple of fights that he has to complete his contract and move to Mayweather Promotions, or go with Carmelo.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where it depends, right? Because as you know, a lot of the times when you've got these big promotional companies, they only keep whoever has the best fighters, like Top Rank or whatever it is, they keep a lot of their fighters fighting the same fighters. So you don't get that situation if you're on Top Rank. You fight a lot of the same Top Rank boxers because on the business side, those business deals are easy to happen because it's only one promotional company. I think when you start
Right.
getting multiple people and multiple, I think that's where it
It's
starts getting a
harder.
little tricky. I can't say what's best for Ryan. I think he's in a position now where between his Instagram followers, like the kid got millions and millions of people following. I think he's in a position in his career now where he can call more of the shots. And like I said, I think he's with Virgil now, which is great for him.
Of
So I think his
course.
future is looking bright. I think that
Of
I think when you
course.
get to that level, honestly, I think with him and Canelo, and I don't really think it matters what you're that big of a star of who your promotional company is. I mean, people know you, and you're still picking and choosing who you want to fight, as opposed to kind of them laying out, the rules for you. And at the end of the day,
And
it's sad, right? It's a business.
it's a business, and it's a business that you actually, even though you have promoters, you actually in control of it. Because the promoter could come up with a fight and guarantee you any kind of money. And it's actually up to you to say, okay, I'm going to accept it, because it is your body, it is your life. Because regardless of who you fighting in that ring, every time you step in that ring, something can happen to you. You know, you could get cut out in the eye or lose an eyeball, or even worse, you can die in there.
Oh,
I mean,
absolutely.
it's a life and death situation. So I think, like I said before, he needs to take his time. He needs to sit back. He needs to finish up with Golden Boy and actually weigh his options. Because even though Mayweather camp got a good camp, because they have Lou Devalier over there training and everything, but you got other people too. You got Aaron Superman Davis out there training people. I mean, there's a lot of people out there. And so I think, like I said, he needs to take his time and let his age and experience get better, you know? But
Oh,
I
absolutely.
definitely
Yeah.
agree with him and not fighting Manny Pacquiao. Forget about it. Manny
Oh
Pacquiao
no.
is
And
one of the greats,
oh
but
yeah. And
it's
listen,
not
and
for him right
that
now.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
not for
That
him.
ship is
It's
sailed.
not for him. It's
No,
not
I
for him.
agree. And listen, the
Not
one
for
thing I
him.
would say, and what we were talking about earlier is, listen, I'm glad that these fights are starting to happen, right? Like people are not trying to protect these undefeated records anymore. It doesn't mean anything if you're 40-0 and the 40 fights that you had, no one knows who those people are. I think again, people get caught up with the whole Mayweather thing, but man, Mayweather's beat more Hall of Famers than anyone. Like you can't compare your record to him. So I think that now that these fights are starting to happen with undefeated champions, and we're seeing a lot of more of those fights happening now, where people are not afraid to lose that undefeated record. Like boxing's going to be in a much better place now when you
Oh
start
yeah.
seeing some of these fights that are happening. Because at the end of the day, like we talked about earlier, who cares? You get 2 or 3 losses on your record and you got 50 wins and you were a great champion and you fought the best of the best. Like I don't think
Uh
anyone holds that against you nowadays. I think that again,
no.
everyone's so caught up on that Mayweather being undefeated, but we got to get past that. We got to get these good fights. And then you said, I think that that's what boxing is missing, like those trilogies, right? Like for every great hero, there
Of
has to be a
course.
great villain, right? And not just in boxing, everywhere. You think about wrestling, Hulk Hogan and Macho Man. You think about Ali and Frazier. Like there always has to be that balance, and I think that that's what we want to see a little bit more in boxing of like those two greats not afraid to fight each other and not being afraid of because getting the undefeated record. And I think that's just we got to get past that. And I think that we're starting to see that this year. It was a good year to get champions fighting champions.
That's right. And also talking about champions and champions, let's get into Carmelo. Carmelo just came off of a good fight, a real good fight, which I was going for Carmelo, but it was a good fight. It was actually, it was a real good fight. But now there's a contender that's been waiting for 2 years to fight this man, and he is the Mexican Monster. Now, I watched a couple of his fights recently, and he lives by that name. He's a monster. Now, I don't think Carmelo is ducking him. I think Carmelo is playing his cards In other words, he's a champion. He's not going to be forced to fight anybody when they're ready. I'm going to fight you when I'm ready. You know what I mean? And that's a good thing about being a champion. You're making the other people wait because that's just going to frustrate them more, and and it's going to be an advantage to you because we all know boxing is, or any sport, is 10% physical and 90, no, 10%, yeah, 10% physical and 90% mental. If you get into somebody's head, you already beaten them. Look at Mike Tyson's days. You already lost to Mike Tyson when Mike Tyson was already going to fight you because he got into your head. So you got into the ring already with the fear. So I think he's using that kind of tactic. I'm going to make you wait. And it's going to frustrate him. And frustrating, Carmelo already won.
I don't know, man. I think you know what's funny. I think when you talk about David Benavidez, listen, I think that we could play
He's a
devil's
monster.
advocate. You could be Canelo, I could be David Benavidez for a second. Listen, what other fight Canelo has out there? Obviously, he loves to fight on the Mexican Cinco de Mayo. That's a big fight. What other fight is he gonna have right now that's bigger than David Benavidez? Right now, I
But
would
bro,
say
he
I would
just
flip
came off a great fight.
with
Why
John
rush him?
Ryder. Nah, brother. I mean,
No,
because
with
I'm
the
gonna
other
tell you.
kid, with the twins. With the
Oh,
twins.
with the I don't think that was a great
With
fight.
the
I,
Charmelo twins. I think it was a
I
good
don't.
fight.
No, it
I
was.
think it was a
Think about
good
it.
fight.
It was the younger, the smaller Charlo brother. He went up 2 weight classes. Like I don't think that was a fight that I think the bigger brother. Yeah, people would have loved to see that, but I don't think that was an incredible fight. But what I would say is now listen. So if you're Canelo, I don't know what other fight to make. But now what I would say is I think the ball's actually in Benavidez' court, and I'll tell you why. Because Benavidez has options, right? If Canelo doesn't want to fight Benavidez, you know what I would do if I was Benavidez? I would go up to 175 and fight Bivol, who actually beat Canelo. Now, if he fights Bivol, the guy that beat Canelo at 175 and beats him, I think that's it. I think whether Canelo fights him or doesn't fight him, then we know for sure David Benavidez would have beat him. Because I'll tell you what, had David Benavidez fought the younger Charlo brother or John Ryder, Benavidez would have knocked him out. Both of them, he
Oh
would have knocked
yeah.
them out
Oh yeah. Oh definitely. The
easily.
dude is tall. The dude is a boxer. He's actually a boxer. He's not a brawler. He's a boxer. He go in there, he'll through combinations, and you'll see him slip or pick a shot, move, duck, and come right back and does not stop. Did not stop. I seen 3 fights and he did not stop. It was the same momentum. Now, where Carmelo is a tosser, which Carmelo we're gonna get the night he fights the Mexican monster? That's the question. And that's only an answer we're going to see once he gets in the ring with him. Eventually, he will have to fight him probably next year. Eventually, they will have to be
Yeah.
talks. There will have to
And
be talks.
Well, no, and that's what I'm saying, and I think that this is the sad part, right? Because listen, I think okay, so if that, let's say if that fight does happen, which I don't think that it is, I think Benavidez is going to have to explore some different options, right? Okay, but then now it's a business side of it, right? So now you're Canelo, I'm David Benavidez, we're going to fight hypothetically Cinco de Mayo. What does that split look like? Because there's no way it's Canelo's going to split that 50-50 with Benavidez. There's no way.
Oh no! Look how long it took Mayweather and Manny Pacquiao to fight, and it was all because of the purse.
That's
It
what I'm
was
saying. So
all
how so
because
how
of the
does that split
purse.
look? So how does that split look?
It's gonna look like it's gonna be another Mayweather with Manny Pacquiao fight. This we're gonna, as us as fans, we're gonna have to wait a long, long time until one of them say, "Okay, let's do this." And I don't think Carmelo is gonna be the one that gonna, because he's a champion. that's gonna step down and say, okay, well, I'm gonna take less of a purse just because I'm gonna fight you. It will have to take the other side to say, okay, I'm gonna have to accept what you give me, beat you, and then do it to you when you want a rematch, if
See,
it ever happens.
See, but that's where I think the ball is in Benavidez's court, right? Because Benavidez beat everyone that's Canelo beats recently, right? Caleb Plant, he KO'd him. I mean, that was a TKO. That was just beautiful. I think if he goes up and he beats Bivol, so now I think if I'm Benavidez's camp and Canelo doesn't want to fight me, I go up to 175. I beat Bivol, who beat Canelo, and then I think that Benavidez has, well, I beat everyone that Canelo beat. I beat the one guy that beat him recently. Canelo's ducking me. And I think that that's where they have the leverage. And listen, I don't think it's going to be 50-50. I agree with you. I don't know what's fair for that split, but I don't think it should be crazy where, Canelo's getting 70, Benavidez is getting 30. I'm sure that's what's going to hold up the fight
It
because the purse.
of the purse, and
Yeah.
that's gonna be on Carmelo's advantage if he's ducking him. If he's not ducking him, then Carmelo, my man, give the fans what they want. Give the fans what they want. Shut them up. As you say that you a better fighter. Shut them up. Shut
Well,
them up. Because
and I
he's
think,
talking
listen, I mean,
reckless.
when you talk about 2024, right, and I'm talking about next year, listen, I mean, that's the fight that people want to see. I'm glad that Earl Spence and Crawford got it in this year because people wanted to see that. Like I said, I think Javante Davis and Ryan, that was great. I think people want to see that. Maybe next year, people want to see Devin Haney versus Tank. But I think the number one fight that everyone wants to see is going to be
It's the
Canelo
Carmelo.
Benavidez, right? And what
Yeah.
better time to do it during Cinco de Mayo?
Yeah, Mexican pride. You know what I mean? Mexican pride, which we all should be proud of who we are, you know? And man, I can't wait. I hope it does happen, man. I can't wait, man. I
Like
hope
I
it
said,
does happen.
like I said, listen, I think, and when you see Canelo getting interviewed, like, listen, he looks like he's annoyed. Everyone always asks him, Benavidez, Benavidez, Benavidez. And like I said, I think if he doesn't want to fight Benavidez, Benitez has those options to fight. Like I said, those guys at 175. I don't know how many more fights are at 168 for him. And listen, to give Benavidez a lot of credit, that last fight that he just had with Demetrius Andrade was an Olympian. So it wasn't like he beat some guy, and Andrade also wanted to fight Canelo too. It wasn't like he beat some guy that was, like a bum. No, Andrade was pretty solid. He looked pretty good the first couple rounds, and obviously, Benavidez came on really strong at the TKO in 6. But Andrade was an Olympian, and I think that Benavidez is doing all the right things. He's getting all the right fights. The fans love him right now, and listen, he keeps doing everything that he's doing. I think that the momentum's going to be more on his side. I think the ball's going to be more on Benavidez's court, and if Canelo doesn't fight him, people are always going to say that Canelo ducked him.
Don't go out like a chump. Don't go out like a chump, Carmelo. Fight the man. Fight the man, Carmelo. Let's get it. Let's now, let me ask you a question, Phil.
Go ahead.
Who would you put your money on if it does happen
That
right
fight, and
now?
listen, and I'm gonna say I'm a big Canelo fan. I love Canelo, but when you look at what Dimitri Bivol, the problems that he gave him with the size and the length, and Benavidez is kind of like that similar that size. Canelo's been around for a while. Benavidez is a little bit younger. I think I would love to see, before we go into that fight, I would love to see Benavidez gets those couple more fights in. I want to see him go the distance. I want to see him really be challenged because I think a lot of these fights that he had, he's so good that he's knocking these guys out quick. But honestly, I would put my money on Benavidez. Really, I think Benavidez's length is a problem for him.
What?
I think he can box, and I think that in this last fight we saw a little bit more of Benavidez's defense that we haven't really had a chance to see
But
before. And
but Phil,
I think
Phil, you a Carmelo fan.
I know I love Canelo, but I think Benavidez really puts it on him on this one. I really do.
Well, let's do this, man. If this fight ever happens, just for podcast sake, I will go with Carmelo. I will go with Carmelo. Only because I'm gonna tell you this. I think him getting pissed off, him getting aggravated, is gonna motivate him more to beat this man. So I think he's gonna train harder because now he wants to prove everybody wrong. And I think he's gonna beat him. I'm not gonna say he's gonna knock him out. I don't think that's gonna happen. But I know or think that he's gonna win it by decision. That's
Oh,
what I
oh
think.
yeah, and listen, if Canelo was to win, right? And this is where I think of some of the examples that we given earlier. Had Benavidez fought John Ryder, who was the guy that Canelo fought 2 fights ago, I think Benavidez knocks him out. I think that the
Well,
smaller Charlo brother, I think Benavidez knocks him out. So I think that Canelo hasn't had. I mean, I got to look back on his record right now. I look back, but I don't think he's had a knockout in a while. And if that power, I mean, I don't doubt that Canelo's strong, but I don't know. I think
he got
Benavidez
power.
takes Canelo. I know, but I think this is what I'm saying. I think Benavidez takes Canelo's punch better than Canelo taking Benavidez's punch.
You think so?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
do. I do. And maybe
I
and
agree
maybe the
with you on
youth
that
has
one.
something to do with it, but I think that I mean, and like I said, I mean, I know Canelo hits hard. Obviously, we've seen him really go in there, but I think listen, Canelo's 33. Maybe this fight happens when he's 34. Maybe it's another year. Maybe it happens when he's 35. He's getting a little bit
Now,
older,
now,
and listen, he's
now,
still
now, if it goes to the age, if wait too long, then my
right,
prediction will change because we all know, depending on the fighter, because there have been some fighters that have proved us wrong, and one of them was the to me is one of the greatest fighters in the world. One, and he fought till he was the age of 50, and that was George Foreman, and he proved everybody wrong. You know, so it depending who it is, and you got to go by how your body feels, how your mind is, because your mind can tell you, yo, I'm still in this game, I can still do it, and you can achieve it, and you can win it. Because like I said before, 90%, 10%. But when you get older, it's hard to lose the weight, it's hard to stay in shape and stuff like that. But it all depends on the athlete and how active he is and how active he is. And I think if
oh,
Carmelo
of course.
stays active the way he is, that no matter what age he is, he's gonna give a good fight. He's gonna
Oh,
give
and
a good
listen,
fight.
and I don't disagree with you, right? But what I would say is you mentioned age, right? So if this fight doesn't happen in 2024 and we're talking about 2025, you're right. I,
Or
I think, and listen, you
26
can
or
speak,
27.
right. And you can speak to this better than me. The power still might be there. I think where Canelo would be at a disadvantage, he might be a step slower, right? Your
Right.
speed starts to slow down, right?
And, and,
So
and, and that's when he lose the fight.
and
That's
that's
when
what I'm
he'll lose
saying.
the
So
fight.
and that's what I'm saying, especially at this last fight with Benavidez and Andrade. I think you saw a lot of Benavidez's defense, which you haven't seen before, and I think that might be the challenge. How does Canelo get to him? And I think you saw that when he had the fight with Bivol, who was a taller guy, much longer reach, very similar to Benavidez, gave him a lot of problems. I think that those are some of the things like he'll have to come inside. And if he's a step slow, I think that opens him up for something right down the alley. And I think that Benavidez is power, man.
And
He
also
just
the
has to
fight
land
with
once.
Mayweather. Also the fight with Mayweather. He proved that he can't fight a boxer. And Mayweather is a boxer. He's not a brawler.
Yeah,
He's a boxer. He'll
yeah, but I think
punch and move. He'll punch and get out your way. And
yeah,
that
and
disturbed his counter punching because he's a counter puncher. If he can slip your punch and bang you to the body and bang you to the head, now he got the advantage. But when he can't do that, now you're disrupting what he got planned. So I think if the Mexican monster does that tactic, fight his fight, he will beat Carmelo. But if he falls into the trap of Carmelo's fight, then the monster will lose that fight and will lose it really fast. I hope it
See,
happens. I look forward to it. I got a couple of beers on that one. If my man wins on it, you can cash at me the money. You can sell me the money. I got my money on Carmelo though, but depending on how long this fight is gonna take,
see,
so
see, like I said, and again, I just think that we all want to see that fight. It'd be a shame if it doesn't happen. I hope that it does. But
it
obviously,
will.
I think the
It
the,
will.
the, the business side, I think the business side, someone's gonna have to be more
Somebody has to
compromisable
say,
and
"F it." Look, it happened when it happened with Manny Pacquiao and Mayweather. We waited a long, long time. Now there was critics saying Mayweather was ducking. Mayweather knew his plan, and Mayweather just waited and waited to when he was ready. And when he was ready, already Manny Pacquiao was getting older, wasn't getting that active, and it was an older Manny Pacquiao. So if Manny Pacquiao was in the prime of his time with Mayweather, do you think he could have beat Mayweather? Mayweather is a thinker. He's a businessman. He's not going to get in there and fight you for pennies. He's going to fight you for millions. And he's going to fight you on his conditions, not on your conditions. And that's what all the boxers have to know. You have to fight when it's your time and when you're ready, not when you're just coming up or whatever. Don't do it because you're going to lose,
well, no,
because
and I think that that's exactly what we're saying about this fight that everyone wants to see. If it goes on a year, and listen, and I think that we think Canelo's older than what he is because he's been around for so long. I think, and I could be wrong. I think Canelo's 33, 34, something like that. I'll look it up right now. But yeah, I think that he starts waiting till he's age 35, 36 to have this fight with Benavidez, who at that time might be 30. I think that yeah, that he loses a lot of those advantages.
definitely. And I give all respect to all the athletes out there. We know that it's a hard profession. It ain't easy. We know all the hours you have to train and all the stuff your body goes through just to satisfy our needs and seeing the sports. I just can't wait. I can't wait.
Hopefully, it
What
happens.
other fights do you want to see coming up?
That's a good question. So obviously that's a great one. Listen, I think that in this next year, I don't know if you saw that Devin Haney fight last night, but man, Devin looked so
I got to
good. I
look at
mean,
that
it
one.
was
I didn't get a chance.
yeah, it was a complete shutout. So I don't know if it would happen, but I'd love to see Devin Haney and Tank, figure that out. I know they even said maybe Devin Haney and Crawford because I think that Devin Haney wants to move up to 147. That would be an incredible fight. I would say that those are the two biggest ones I think right now that I would really like pay money to see. And I think that that's the thing about boxing with this pay per view and it being $100 now
Oh
or ninety
yeah,
dollars. Like it's got to be a fight that everyone wants to make the money, but they have to really load up these cards where people want to see them. And I think that that's where MMA does a little bit of a better job where they have the main event, but even the co-main event is really good and people want to see it. I think for
yeah,
boxing that's where they're losing a lot of people where they're charging $100 and it's that one main event and a lot of the
and
guys sometimes I'm not all this on the other cards you don't know who they are.
and that's what MMA was destroying boxing at its time, because not everything was pay per view. There was few fights that you can see, and good fights you can see on regular TV. Like he had a interview not too long ago when he was saying to De La Hoya and them, I will have 5 fights, and 4 fights you can see for free,
Mm-hmm.
and you will only have to pay for one pay per view. So I think that's a big thing about boxing too. That every boxing fight, any main card, you gotta spend $60, $70 just to see it, and
A
hopefully it's a good
hundred,
fight, or a
a
hundred,
hundred now. Yeah, it's a
and
hundred.
hopefully it was a good fight that you could say, okay, it was worth my money, you know. So that has a lot to do with it. But then I understand on the other
And,
side that the fighters have to make the money too. And the only way
Right,
right now they're making
exactly.
the money is pay-per-view because of the physical they have to go through. So they got bills,
Yeah.
They only could do it for so long before they say, "Yeah, I'm done." And promoters
Yeah.
shouldn't make all the money, So I understand that. I definitely
And you know
understand that.
what? And you know what I gotta say though, over this last year, like really big shout out to ESPN too. Not that they are paying for anything on this podcast, but this last year they had a lot of female fights on there. I think Devin Haney and Lomachenko, that was on ESPN. So like those are some good fights to see that were
Yeah,
free that people could, the casual boxing fan. Because you're right, I think that for me to spend $100, it's got to be someone who I love and that it's
gotta
gonna
be
be a
it's
great
gotta be a super
fight.
fight.
Yeah,
It's gotta be a super
yeah.
fight. It's gotta be like, woof. Like I said, I gotta get my popcorn, gotta get my beer. I don't want the fight to
And
be
and
over
and
with before I even sit down.
but
Like
see,
Mike
but I
Tyson.
think that
And no disrespect to
right.
Mike Tyson, because Mike Tyson was one of my favorites, but you know, now boxing has changed. You can't watch old boxing and say, okay, like the days of Sugar Ray Leonard or even before that with Joe Louis, where they could go 15 rounds, or no rounds counting, just until a man can't stand up no more. So times has changed, and people have changed, and things have changed, but I like to see it. I like to see it.
Oh, but this is just going back to that for a quick second, and this is where I think the promotion and that side of boxing is messed up. Because if I tell you, listen, I'm gonna charge you $99.95 for a pay-per-view, but these are gonna be the fights. You're gonna see Canelo and Benavidez as the main
Ooh,
event. You're also
ooh,
you're
yeah.
also gonna see Devin Haney versus Javante
Oh,
Davis.
I
You're
would pay
also
two
you're
hundred
also
dollars.
gonna see. Right. So that's my point, right? If we were able to load up but I
Gotta
know
have a good
obviously
card.
there's a whole host of reasons, right? And the
Gotta
promotion
have
and
a great
everyone wanting
card.
a split, like those things can't happen like kind of like the Super Bowl of boxing. But man, if they were able to load up cards like that, yeah, I mean, and listen, I
Oh
think
man.
you'd really see some
Oh
amazing
man.
numbers.
And then to come back with, if you lose, you can have your rematch and we'll do the same thing. Oh man, it'd be like WrestleMania all over again. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's crazy.
yeah.
So
But no, but just
go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, but listen, I think that we talked a lot about it tonight, but I think that boxing's in a great place. I think that we had a great year. I just think that we got to keep the momentum going into 2024, where again, these fights happening, people are not afraid to have that L on their record, and it'd be more about the fights and getting the fighters paid, and getting the fans the things that they want to see. And I think that getting past that Mayweather area of having to be undefeated, like that doesn't matter if you're 40-0 and the people don't know who the 40 wins are. People want to see great fights, and we got to keep boxing alive.
You know what if I was Carmelo and gonna fight the Mexican Mafia, who I have as the singer to my ring walkness, as I call it.
Oh.
I will have Tupac Shakur. Tupac Shakur is alive.
Oh my God. Okay, I gotta go. This is when this is going left. All right. Thanks for your time tonight. This has been fantastic. We got to do this again. If people like the podcast, tap in. They could cash app us, and we'll keep it going.
No, but please, everybody, please subscribe and like to my YouTube channel. Phil, it was a pleasure being with you. And just to let y'all know, I had quarantine on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, and he's my middle brother. And this one over here is my baby brother, Phil. So for all y'all that are shocked, yeah, we have different fathers and different mothers. He's adopted. He was raised by wolves.
That's crazy.
Phil, till next week, people, thank you for tuning in to the podcast. I'm your host with my co-host, Phil. And till next week, we're going to do this again and again. Thank you for tuning in, Phil. Have a blessed day. I'll see you next week, bro.
Have a good night. Absolutely.
Next week, Phil will be back on, and we're gonna talk about more boxing. And it's great matches coming up. Till then, peace, y'all. Have a blessed day.